All right, I am showing noon on the dot, so we will go ahead and get started. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us today. My name is Andy Frisky, and I work at the American Family Insurance DreamBank, where we believe in the transformative power of dreams. And on behalf of the team, we're thrilled to have you with us here today. As we get started, couple housekeeping items. First one, though, we always like to learn where folks are tuning in from today and encourage you to do so in the chat if you are comfortable with that. I know we're pretty much all Zoom experts at this point, but it is at the bottom of your screen and it looks like a little text message bubble. Also, too, you know, we very much appreciate you taking the time out of your day to join us here. You know, this isn't a class. You made the conscious effort to make this happen, and we very much appreciate that. With that being said, participation is highly encouraged. If you're able to have your camera on, please go ahead and do so. Again, this chat box will be a great resource for you. Kristin will be taking questions at some point, but it's also a great tool, as I'm sure that you're aware of, to connect with other fellow dreamers in this chat here today. So please be sure to use that when you are comfortable. I'd like to take a little bit of time, though, before I go ahead and introduce Kristin and share with you a little bit about DreamBank if you aren't familiar. So here at American Family Insurance, we believe that communities are stronger and the future is brighter when people are actively pursuing their dream. And that's why DreamBank was created. It's an inspirational community destination and digital experience that is dedicated to dreamers everywhere. Our offerings are designed to help you celebrate the dream journey, overcome obstacles, and stay motivated. So this event happens to fall under our business series. So I manage our business and our career series. We have 9 distinct event series at DreamBank, though. I'll go ahead and put a link in the chat here in a little bit, highlighting some of our other upcoming events, in addition to our YouTube page. So this event is being recorded today. It will be housed there roughly a week after this airs. But the YouTube channel is a great resource for all of our events that I should say most of our events that we've been streaming since the end of March of 2020. So really, if you're curious about something else or wanting to learn more about what the business or career series has to offer, that will be a great place to check that out. But let me go ahead and introduce our featured speaker today, Kristin Bach. So Kristin, aka the woman who determined to make sure people feel seen and heard, is a speaker, coach, and founder of Body Language Blueprints, an online platform that helps leaders and professionals win more clients, draw more people in, and have followers at to the end of Earth using the science of body language and psychology. Kristin is on a mission to help leaders provide the nonverbal respect everyone wants and needs. Kristin self-identifies as a nonverbal nerd and hopes to one day be viewed as cool by her children. She's a thought bubble enthusiast, and only once did she meet a 7-layer bar that she did not like. Without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and kick it over to Kristin. Kristin, take it away.
Well, hello there, and I'm going to dive right in, and I'm going to take you back in time. So we're going to do a little time travel and go back to the year 1992. Hopefully you were around at that time. But in 1992, I was a recent college graduate, and I was getting ready for my first real interview. So I put on my real interview clothes, I drove to the real office, and I was making small talk with the receptionist. Things were going really well until the HR rep came and took me back for the interview. And very quickly, I started to get uneasy. I couldn't get a read on anything. I wasn't sure how I was doing. I was met with a face that looked a lot like this. So who's been there where you just kind of met with this blank, expressionless, deadpan look? It was cueless. So I felt like I was in social quicksand, that I was sinking, I was flailing, I was grasping for any sense of how I was doing. And to add a little drama to the event, not only was my interviewer deadpan, she was also a smoker. So she would literally ask me a question and smoke during my answer. It was brutal. I muddled through, but I left that interview completely unsure on how I had done. Did I do well? Had I done poorly? I really didn't know. So you might have a couple questions at this point. First being, what? She smoked? It was 1992. That literally was legal at the time. And yes, it was where she would ask a question, take a drag, and then exhale as I answered my questions. So as I said, it was really brutal, and I left completely confused. Now, you also might be thinking, well, she's an HR rep. She wants to be very neutral. She doesn't want to kind of give away how you're doing. I get that, but I just want to say that I left that interview completely negative about the company. My perception with that one interaction changed my whole view of the company. And that's a pretty big deal when you're trying to attract and retain talent. And that's what I'm here to talk to you about today, is this idea of giving cues. I think that with businesses, with leadership, and just the global community at large, that we suffer from cuelessness. We are on our phones a lot. We are on devices, and we're losing a little bit of that art. And it becomes critical to be able to understand what cues you're receiving as well as sending. And as the saying goes, don't judge a book by its cover. The reality is we actually do. And our brain is hardwired to look for these cues. So it's critical that we understand them. So our nonverbals are constantly talking, and I want to make you aware of them. So we are going to jump in with a little bit of a quiz. So have your chat open, and this is easy. We're going to answer A or B. So let's say you go to dinner tonight. Who is going to give you better customer service? Go ahead and put, okay, I'm seeing a lot of A's. Yes, yes. Okay, and can we all admit we've had B? And you know what, the second they come to take your order, you're like, oh, this is not going to be great. Okay, so A. I don't think I saw any B's yet. All right, how about, A. How about this here? Who do you think is more confident? And this one's a little more tricky. So who do you think? Okay, yeah, I'm getting, a fair amount of A's. All right. So yeah, I'm going to say A. And like I said, this one's a little more tricky. What you can see with this photo here is they both look pretty friendly and confident. However, the gentleman number B is blocking. He has his hands in front of him. It's what they call the fig leaf, protecting his privates. And we often do this when we feel a little bit insecure or threatened. So our brain knows that without being taught, that the guy on the right, A, is a little more confident. Okay, how about this? Who's the better listener? Okay, I see A, I see B. Okay, A, B. Ooh, this is a little bit more split. Okay, good. All right, you're both right. I think you're both right. Now, from a brain standpoint, A is, I'm just going to say A here because the head is tilted. And what that's doing is it's exposing the ear and showing that you're listening. So we recognize that as someone who's paying attention. However, I have met many people that are like B, that listen very intensely. So I want to have this, we're going to put a pin in this because I'm going to circle back to this later and just talk about some of the cues that B is giving off. All right, you go to a gathering. Who do you approach first, A or B? Okay, B. It probably depends on your personality, but I would, okay, we got an A. We got an A. I would be terrified to approach A because she's kind of looking down her nose. She feels a little bit more judgy. Whereas B seems a little bit more open, a little bit more friendly. I would feel a lot more safe approaching B. Okay, who is genuinely happy to see you? Okay. Yes, you are all picking the one who's genuinely smiling, and that we can tell that the smizing, the little crinkles around the eyes, where B looks like the fake smiler that, nice to meet you. All right. And I think this is the last one. Who is interested in your idea? A or B? Okay. Wow. Oh, I think I saw one B. But okay, I'm going to say A, and there's different cues here as well. But the other guy looks a little bit more like, really? I don't know. So the question is, how did you know these answers? You've probably not taken a body language course. How did you know these? And the answer is because our brain was designed to read these. It is like a software program constantly running in the background. So it knows what it is doing. So with that in mind, I've got a couple questions for you. What percentage of our communication is nonverbal? Do you think it's 10, 25, 50, or 60%? Okay, so we've got a D, 60%, C, yep. All right, I knew this was a smart crowd. The answer I was looking for was D. Now, pick your study. There's a million different studies out there, but it says the research shows 60 to 93% of our communication is nonverbal. Again, this depends on variables, context. It depends on a ton of different things. But even if we skew low and we say 60%, that is still more than half of our communication. And that's what I want you to kind of give weight to today, because when we go into important interviews, meetings, we are doing a pitch, we're presenting, we have a date, anything like that, we are often thinking about, what am I going to say? I want you to start thinking about, how am I saying it? How am I showing up? What kind of cues am I giving off? So when I say nonverbal communication, do I mean that you're a mime and you should silently talk to people? No, I don't mean that at all. What I mean is that there's really kind of three components to nonverbal communication. So first is body language. This is your facial expression, your posture, your stance, the way you walk. That all factors in. So if I show this picture here, hopefully you can see this large enough. Who would you want presenting this course? The guy on the left, the middle, or the right? Well, actually, you can put an L, M, or R. Right, okay. Yeah, well, the correct answer is actually me. You want me presenting this course, but I'm going to say the woman on the right, because very quickly your brain knows that guy's having a hard day. He's depressed. Things are not great. The woman in the middle looks a little bit insecure, but the woman on the right looks pretty friendly and confident. That is who you want presenting. And that is without saying a word. You were able to determine that immediately. I also mean tone of voice. So people forget about this part of it. This actually is part of our nonverbals, even though it is a verbal skill. But our volume, our tone, our pitch, the question inflection, where you go up at the end of a sentence, and our cadence all factor into this information, into how people perceive us. And then the last one is ornaments, which is why the fashion industry makes billions of dollars every year. So here's just an image where you can see our shoes, the clothing we choose to wear, our glasses, do we have a watch? What do we have, any kind of piercings, etc. This is all part of our brand. This is how we show up. And this is why a lot of companies want to have you wear a uniform, because it allows them to control how you are showing up. So those three components really factor in. Now, our nonverbals are 12 to 13 times more powerful than our words. So we can say something, but if our nonverbals aren't in alignment, we default to the nonverbals. So if I say, I'm happy to be here today, even though I'm saying I'm happy to be here today, you're going to be like, nope. So it's pretty powerful stuff. And our brain is one of the most powerful tools we have. So I want us to show up and understand what these cues are saying. So I have 4 body language basics that I want you to have kind of in your back pocket that we are going to go over. So I'm going to just pause here for a second. Andrew, anything popping up that we need to be answering with questions?
Nothing yet. Nothing right now.
Okay, and feel free, everyone, to put questions in. I'll pause again and we'll be sure to answer them. But I'm going to dive right in then to body language cue number 1. So first impressions. So go ahead and put in the chat how long you think you have to make a first impression. So I'll give you a few seconds to do that while I sip my tea. Okay, 15 seconds, 1 second, 3 seconds, 10. Okay. All right. So perhaps you caught that my countdown timer started at 7. So it is 7 seconds or less. And actually the research out there is probably closer to like 1 or 2 seconds. So it is very brief. It is very quick that our brain is really sizing things up. So when someone sees you is the first time they have an impression of you. It is not the moment you speak. So I wish I would have known that when I was younger, wearing black, slinking around, hoping no one would see me. I wish I would have realized, oh my gosh, people are still forming an impression. So it is the moment someone sees you. So already with these images, you've already put these people in categories, you know, shy, creepy, mysterious, whatever it might be. You've put them in a bit of a category. And I just want to share as well that digital first impressions. So Andrew, I'm not sure. I think there was a picture of me that went out. You already had a first impression of me before we started this today. So our websites, our profile pictures, our email, the words that we use in our emails, those are all first impressions. And the reality is, for most of us these days, we have a digital first impression before we connect with people in person. So what I want you to think about is the acronym PAIN. So when we first meet someone, our brain puts them in a category. And so for the most part, there's 4 different categories. There's friend, foe, potential mate, or indifference. Those are kind of the biggies. For our purposes, I'm going to say friend or foe. Those are the 2 main categories. Our brain is constantly scanning. So it's like that software program. I want to say it's about every, like 3 times a second, your brain is basically scanning, making sure you're safe. That is its job. It is constantly checking. So it's deciding friend or foe. And this goes back to kind of cave people days where we needed to know very quickly, is this a friend or foe? Now, I've been working hard to get into that friend bucket. So if you've put me in the friend bucket, your brain at this point is kind of cherry picking. It's saying, see, you can trust her. She's nice. She'll be a friend. If, however, you've put me in the foe bucket, your brain is doing the same thing, saying, I don't know. I would be a little careful. I don't trust her. I'm a little bit skeptical. So we want to understand the cues so we can get into that friend bucket. A is accurate. We are about 76% accurate. That's not perfect, but that's pretty good. And again, this is self-preservation. This is our brain's way to keep us safe. We've had to get pretty good at it. I is immediate, so very quick, couple seconds. And nonverbal, it's those 3 things that I mentioned, the body language, the vocal tone, and the ornaments that help. It's like the intel for our brain to make those snap, decisions. So imagine someone coming up behind you in an alley. That's where your brain is kind of running these analytics very quickly and making a decision. All right, quick study that I want to share with you from Frank Brunieri. So Frank Brunieri is a researcher, and he wanted to really get at this idea of first impressions. So he designed a study where he had trained evaluators interview candidates, and he asked them to rate them on warmth, competence, and confidence. They did a 20-minute interview, and he actually filmed the interactions. He then took that footage and he showed it to a second group of trained evaluators, and he asked them to do the same thing, rate these candidates on warmth, competence, and confidence. However, with the second group, instead of showing them the 20 minutes, he showed them 20 seconds. So it was really just a matter of them kind of coming in, shaking a hand. Hello, I'm Kristin, nice to meet you, and sitting down. So he cut out all of like the verbal interaction. And he found that within 20 seconds, those evaluators were giving similar type of ratings, that's amazing and terrifying all at the same time. And if you're in HR, You probably experienced this where someone looks great on paper and you meet them and immediately you think, nope. Or that can be vice versa. Okay, second body language tip, trust indicators. So question for you, put in the chat. When you first meet someone, what part of the body do you notice first? Okay, eyes, face, teeth. Yes, I always get teeth. I'm glad I brushed today. Face, hands. Okay, good. All right, hair. All right, so yes to all of these. So hair, smiles, teeth, hair, all of that, for sure our brain is processing. The one kind of sneaky thing is what our brain is also really paying attention to, our hands. Hands are our trust indicators. So again, we go back to cave people days. We need to know, is that person coming up over the horizon a friend or a foe? Do they have a rock, a spear? Can they hurt me? Hands can hold a weapon. They can do harm. They can grab, which is why it is no surprise that police officers say, put your hands up. Or why every alien movie is like, we come in peace. It is like showing I am not a threat. So palms are something I want you to be considering. An open palm is usually viewed very favorably. And I just want to share this study here, where jurors find defendants who put their hands under the table as more sneaky, untrustworthy, and deceitful. That's fascinating. I don't think in that study, the jurors thought, I can't see the hands and I'm just not buying it. It was something subconscious where they just thought like, I don't know if I buy this. Okay, if we are operating under this philosophy, then what I want you to do is keep your hands visible and expressive. So if you are someone, if you're a pocket person, you're constantly putting your hands in your pockets, I want you to really work hard now to keep them out of your pockets and keep them expressive. So on a virtual call, yes, we should keep our hands visible. We want to make sure that people can see them. When we're just talking in general, we want to keep them visible. So I want you to think of like a strike, like a baseball strike. Is it strike zone? Strike, I don't know. Okay, don't judge. Strike, we're going to go with strike zone. All right, if you keep your hands in the strike zone, that's a good default. That is pretty safe. You can be very expressive, but keep it kind of subdued. If you go out of the box, it gives you a little bit more energy. So you have, oh, there's something I want to tell you, or I have a big idea. Or if I put my hands at my sides and I don't use them, that kind of brings things down. Now, if I talk to you the whole time like this, what would you be thinking? You might be thinking like, wow, this is a bit intense. So I want us to think of the spectrum here. That we want to modulate how we are using this. So too high can get to be too much, but too low is a bit boring, a little bit low. So if I talk to you this whole time like this, and I didn't use my hands, I can actually hear it in my voice that I want to bring them out. Okay, I want to just share with you why using your hands is so important. So there's two reasons. One, it is a gift for you. If I tied your hands at your side and you couldn't, if you had a hard time talking, this is why. When we use our hands, it actually lightens our cognitive load. So it allows us to explain things more clearly. It helps us, which is why you see very young children, even 2 or 3 years old, kind of doing these things or they're talking about something. It's helping them explain and process. So that's one reason. Number two, it is a gift for the other person. When you use your hands when speaking, you're allowing them to process the information on 2 levels. So they're hearing it, they're seeing it. So it's like underlining, bolding, highlighting what you're saying. Now you saw what I did there. If I said that same thing, it's a gift for the other person. It's like hearing and seeing. It's like highlighting, underlining, and bolding. That's not as good as hearing, seeing, underlining, and bolding. Like that just sticks more. So it's okay to use your hands. And we're going to talk about that and a little bit further down the road here. Okay. Number 3, purposeful gazing. I'm guessing your parents told you make good eye contact, which they're right. That is a good thing to do. Now, I just want to point out that a lot of the body language basics are the same in person as they are virtually. The exception here is eye contact when you're on camera, you are looking at the actual camera. And you've probably heard this by this point, but I'm talking to the green dot right now, which took practice. So if you want to put a picture there or a note or something, but when you are speaking, you want to be talking to the camera. If you're listening, you can take in the rest of the screen, but otherwise, I want to build eye contact with you. So if I was talking here and I'm kind of looking around my screen, that's not as good as if I'm talking with you. Okay, so eye contact in person. There's two main ways that we make eye contact. So professional gazing, this is a highly competent cue. This is where we make eye contact, and then when we break gaze, we go up high on the forehead. They've done studies with leaders, and they find that this tends to be their default. Okay, actually, I'm going to just try and demo this. So this is where you're looking at someone's eyes, and then when you naturally break gaze, your eyes go up. So you're forming this kind of shape. This, again, is a real high confident cue. So this is something you can use if you're trying to show that you know your stuff, that you want to build that connection, but show that you are competent. That's a great thing to do. Now, when I say break gaze, I mean when you kind of look away or you're thinking, because if you're talking to someone and you just never break gaze and you constantly are staring at them, that's a problem. That starts to get creepy. So we naturally, when we're talking, we look at someone and then we're often, accessing thoughts, looking around, we're breaking gaze. That's what I mean. All right. Wait, I'm going to go back to my slide here. So social gazing is where we're making eye contact and then we're dropping our gaze to the mouth. This is a very warm, friendly cue. This is my default. So I tend to look here and I'm dropping, we're kind of looking in that lower section of the face. This is a great thing to do if you're trying to build rapport with a client, with a colleague. Really, I want to just shine a light on these so you know how to toggle between them. So if I'm building that relationship, I probably want to use social gazing. If I'm in a meeting or I'm presenting or I'm pitching, I might want to use the professional gazing. So just understand this one's trickier to do and harder to practice. Just kind of do it on the sly, never in a high stakes situation until you feel like you have a handle on it, but just start observing what is the other person doing, what is your default, and understand that there is a spectrum, which is impacted by culture. So I'm speaking from the standpoint of the States. 60 to 70% is what we view as, kind of normal. If you're giving too much eye contact, this starts to feel, like I said, creepy, intense, like they're judging. And if you're not giving enough eye contact, that feels disrespectful or not engaged. And that simply can be culture. We've hosted exchange students where that is a sign of respect to, not give you eye contact when they're speaking. It also can be really difficult for someone who's on the spectrum. So take this in context. Happily, most of us go with 60 to 70%. All right. The last body language cue that I want to cover is fronting. So fronting, it's one of my favorite skills because it's the ultimate way to show nonverbal respect. It is a way to really just give that presence. So Frank Karmoff from the University of Brussels, he found that when we see someone straight on, and the more we can see of them, the better it is. And this makes sense because your brain is trying to get information. This is something you want to consider when you're having an interview with someone, when you're meeting with someone, when you're giving a presentation, when you're behind a desk, a podium, etc. People aren't able to take in as much of you, and it doesn't feel as engaging. So kind of think about how you might want to utilize that. And fronting is facing your top, torso, and toes towards the other person. And we can feel the difference. So when we fully face someone, it's also called Naval Intelligence, where imagine a string coming off of your navel and attaching to the other person. If you can keep that in line, you are fronting. Now, people often think they're fronting, but they're not, because our feet are turned, or our torso a little bit. And that's a big difference. So Science of People did a study. They were at a conference. They explained what fronting was. They asked the participants, how many of you front when you're networking? And 70% said, I front. Of course, they videoed it. They went back and looked at the tapes, and it was 30%. Because our feet are often pointed towards what we're interested in, which might be the restrooms, the exit, another person, the food. So just having a little bit of turn where you're not fully facing, people can feel that. So I would really encourage you to go home today and really try fronting with your loved ones. I had a client once who was working on this, and she said that she worked on it for the week and had people coming up to her and asking her if she got a haircut. And her thought was, I can't prove it, but I think they just sensed the difference. They weren't sure what it was. And I will say that it can also happen while sitting. So when you're sitting, you probably have to turn in your seat, or actually turn your seat. But it does, when you front, you are a better listener because you are engaged. Okay, I'm going to pause there. Andrew, anything bubbling up? Or do I keep going?
There's a question a ways back during the PAIN acronym I think you might have addressed. So it says, what about hand talkers? I talk with my hands a lot, and I've been told to sit on my hands when I talk, but that looks odd. I notice you're talking with your hands very nicely, but it's aligning with your words. Suggestions for those who can't control their hands.
Okay, I don't sit on them. That's sad. And I know there was a period of time when speakers were told don't use their hands. The science is there. Actually, Science People actually did another study with TED Talks, and they found when they compared identical topics and speakers that the TED Talks that had more views also had at least double the amount of hand gestures. So there's some real hard science there that it's a good thing. I would say if you're just like doing this all the time, that's not good. Leaders tend to have very specific and slower fluid movements. So there's 3 things we're going to talk about, and we're going to do this in steps. So they're more conscientious on how they use them. So I wouldn't just kind of do this stuff, but you're helping to explain. I don't know if that answered it, but I have a couple that I'm going to give you in when we get to some competence cues. Okay, good. Oh, yes. Thank you. All right. All right. Then I'm going to keep going. So cues. Now we're into cues. I want us to be thinking about this. When we first meet someone, our brain is answering just really 2 questions. So it's deciding friend or foe. But the big thing it's answering is, can I trust them? And can I rely on them? And what is at the heart of this is warmth and competence. That is what our brain is deciding, and pretty much in that order. So there's a lot of people, like you'll hear, this is my pet peeve. People don't have to like me, they just have to do their job. Yes, but if they like you, you're going to get a lot more out of them. So people do have to trust you for things to go well, and that is largely through warmth cues. So I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about the warmth part and the competence part, and when you have both, you have influence, you have charisma. People will listen to you. You have a little more sway because you are a good balance. Now, during the pandemic, I noticed that one of the things when I was on a call like this, and of course, if you're just listening, this is no problem. But if I was in a meeting and I was just listening to the leader of the meeting, I would look a lot like this. Okay, this is me. Like on every Zoom call, if I'm just listening. Okay, now if I warm that up, that's a whole lot different, right? That if I'm nodding, smiling, tilting my head a little bit, I can tell you who you'd rather interact with. It's the person on the right. So this is what I mean about cues. You'll like the left, you're like, that's RBF. If you've heard, I'm going to say resting bothered face. You often hear a different term for that other B. That is gender specific. And guess what? It is an equal opportunity employer. This is not just women that do this. What RBF is when your face is relaxed, the corners of your mouth might turn down, or the corners of your eyes. It can make you look a little bit sad or angry. That's all it is. If you can add in some of these cues, this is a gift for the other person. This is what I was experiencing in that interview, where I had no idea how I was doing. So, okay, so that's me. I just want to show you. Here's a guy, an example, looks kind of angry on the left, but much more friendly and approachable on the right. And then we have one more example here, where again, a little bit more angry. I would much rather talk to the person on the right. So this is where we need to be mindful of the cues that we are sending. Okay, so let's talk about warmth cues. If you are someone that is told you're intimidating or you're hard to approach, you want to pay a little bit more attention to the warmth cues. So mirroring is a great way to do that. This is a way to gauge and show interest. So here's an image here where if you've ever caught yourself, standing like someone, moving, sometimes even wear the same kind of clothes, etc., that is a sign that you are in alignment. And that's a great cue for you to be on the lookout for, that you're seeing that when you cross your legs, they cross yours, etc. Or when they make a movement, you're following. That's a good cue you're in alignment. So chameleonization is non-verbally, this is mirroring, postures and gestures that we're in alignment. And actually there's some studies out there that show that when people start to look alike, as they've been, if they've been married a long time, they think it's from mirroring that we start to get the same kind of wrinkles. I think that's crazy. That's amazing. Also verbally, cadence, how fast you're speaking, and then word usage. We can try and mimic a little bit the other person. You may have noticed I speak quickly, and I have a friend who speaks very slowly. I don't slow it down to his level, but when I'm with him, I try to pause a little more, just kind of match up, sync up with him, and you can just sort of see how he just relaxes a little bit. So that can be culturally, that can be regionally. But the big one is word usage. I would encourage you, if you can echo what the other person is doing, it's showing your understanding. So this is, if you have a coworker that comes to you and says, I'm so frustrated with what's going on. If you echo back, oh, I understand how it's frustrating. You are demonstrating, I heard you, instead of just using your own words. So this is a pretty easy tool to use and effective. But beware of miming. People know when they're being played. So we don't want to do that. If you're copying every move, no, then it starts to feel salesy and sleazy. This is more of a cue to notice that you are in sync and to be mindful when speaking as well. There is the triple nod. So this is the 1, 2, 3. This is the tell me more cue. This is the ellipses, the ... If you are someone who tends to be a little more quiet, this is a gift. If you are doing this, this is a way to pull more information out. Your supervisor is giving you an assignment and you do that. They often will keep talking and give you more information. So this shows you're listening. It's also a way to get a little bit more information. There's also the head tilt, which is what I said before. If you're a dog owner, we love it, right? When our dogs tilt their head because it shows they're listening. Again, it's exposing the ear and showing. If I say, did you hear that? Most people say, what? They're exposing their ear, they're showing they're listening. So I have my image here. There's different levels, and I recently read a study that the higher your status, the less severe you tilt your head. So like that guy in the middle, I don't think he's in a power position. But it's important to give these cues that we are paying attention. It might just be a little bit more slight. And a superpower tip is if you use the head tilt, it makes things seem a little nicer. So if you have to tell a client or an employee something not great. If you tilt the head, it doesn't fix everything, but it makes it a little nicer. So if I say, I'm sorry, there's no room for you on the team right now, or I'm sorry, there's no room for you on the team right now. And I would add warmth to that. I'd say, I'm sorry, there's not room for you on the team right now, but let's talk about ways that we can be ready for the next round. Okay. There is a range. There's a spectrum to this too. So if you're doing this, that's bobblehead. That's rushing. That makes people feel uncomfortable. That's not a good thing. And again, if you're not doing any movement at all, that's stressful. That's that social quicksand because you're not giving any intel. All right, and then my last little warmth cue is the eyebrow flash. This is a way to acknowledge someone. This is one of my favorite tips for customer service, that if someone comes in and you're busy, I'm on the phone and you come in, if I just kind of do the eyebrow flash, it's still acknowledging your presence and it lets people feel seen and heard. Okay, let's talk about competence cues. Power pose. Amy Cuddy made this famous with her TED Talk. She talked about power posing. And in it, Amy Cuddy is a Harvard professor, and she studied people that were standing confidently versus not, and really started to dig into the science behind that. So I just want to talk about this. There was a study done by a professor, Stephen Sessi, who was kind of testing out her research. So he had a class or a section, identical course. And he thought, I'm going to try the one class and I'm going to do power posing it. And then the other one, I'm not going to. And his theory, this is sort of like rate my professor kind of stuff, where he thought, okay, these are the credentials that I'm being judged on. And his hypothesis was that if he did the power posing, he would go up in instructor knowledge and accessibility, which is really getting at that warmth competence. Like he would be viewed as more credible and accessible, more relatable. So he, of course, designed the classes identically, same slides, same content, same textbook, same everything. But in the one class, he was practicing using more confident body language. And at the end of the semester, with his ratings, he actually went up in all 5 areas in the course that he used power body language. I highlighted textbook quality here because that clearly didn't change. But this is called the halo principle. When you are viewed positively, anything you say or do is viewed more positively. So, and that's the power of warmth and competence, where you have more influence. So even the textbook he used was rated better. Okay, so let me just talk about what this is. So low power is pretty much where you're collapsing in on yourself. So this is where your shoulders roll in, you're blocking and covering parts of your body, putting your head down, making yourself smaller. A great way to spot this is when you are watching like a sports event. You can almost tell without looking at the score who the loser is, because they tend to make themselves smaller. Now, I want to highlight the woman on the upper left here. When we are on our devices, we automatically go into low power posing. We tend to make ourselves look smaller. Okay, let's compare this to high power, which is where we're taking up more space. They call it the Wonder Woman pose or the starfish pose. We're owning the area around us. So this is a very confident way of showing up. And you'll see here, I've got the woman in the corner with her phone, but she's holding it out. She's not really collapsing in on herself. So these are things to certainly keep in mind when you yourself are, let's say you're at a networking event, instead of doing this, you want to be checking it more here, keeping yourself open. So influencers both show and feel increased levels of confidence. When you stand confidently, you start to feel more confident as well. All right, there is a spectrum to this. As always, there's a theme here. If you walk in with Wonder Woman pose to an interview or starfish, it's not going to go well. They're going to be like, who are you? So we want to be in what I call the launch stance. So if you're up for it, you can stand. I can't see you. But keep your feet shoulder width apart, your arms at your side, your head is up looking straight forward. Open torso, you are not blocking with a purse or a bag or a clipboard or anything like that. We're keeping that open. Our shoulders are down. We want to keep our shoulders far away from our ears. That is a sign of confidence. It's turtling when we go up. And we want to keep our hands visible. This should be your default. Now, when I first started doing this did not feel natural to me. It took me time. Now it feels odd when I don't do it. All right. The lower lid flex. This is sort of a fun one. So when we first started, I did that quiz with you and we had an equal split with the A-B for the listening. So a lower lid flex shows contemplation, but it can show suspicion and scrutiny. So sometimes very confident people, when they are focused, they tense their lower lid. So go ahead and pretend like you're looking at something across the room. You might tense your lower lid. And I noticed our family enjoys tennis. We've been watching the US Open. I for sure was watching Serena Williams. And I noticed that she, before she received a serve or when she was serving, you would often see her tense her lower lid because she's focusing on that ball. So, okay. What it does is when we narrow our eyes, it blocks out light and allows us to see in greater detail. So some people do listen this way. It's very respectful. They're really focused on listening. So it looks a little bit like this, and it can mean that they're trying to understand more deeply. It also can mean that they've gone from listening to scrutinizing. So if you see this cue, this is coming at you, this is a good time for you to pause, take questions, give an example, say something like, does this make sense? Do you want me to just go over this one more time? I'm not sure I explained that well. This is a way to really cue in on this cue, that you've noticed it, you've addressed it. Okay, and I couldn't resist, but this comes from, if anyone saw Zoolander Blue Steel, Ben Stiller said that he always noticed that Pierce Brosnan, whenever he was on the red carpet, would do like the smolder, like he would tense his lower lid. It can show interest in a romantic way. So there's a lot of different ways this can go, but just understand if you are, I think I saw a comment pop up saying, I'm a lower lid tensor listener. Yes, I met with a gentleman who runs leadership workshops, and he said early on in his career, he was told that he was intimidating because he did that. They said he would, squint at them. He still does it. When I had conversations with him, he was still doing it, but he was then nodding, tilting his head. He was adding in those warmth cues to combat it. So it's a really great skill to have. So don't get rid of it. Just understand how it's being perceived. The steeple. All right, the steeple. If you watch Shark Tank, this is Kevin O'Leary. He does this all the time. A lot of politicians, leaders do this. Oprah does this. I'll see her. She'll often talk like this and then kind of expand out and make her points. This is a high competence cue. So it is like power posing for your hands. It's showing you're relaxed, that you're confident, and you're keeping those palms kind of visible. So you might see like that one where it's on the desk. People do that in meetings. And I have to say, I worked with a law firm earlier this year, and I had to chuckle because they were wanting me to go through different cues and stuff. And the one lady the entire time was doing this on the table. That made total sense. She's a lawyer, that she's a very confident person. Okay, it shows that you're a contemplative thinker, and who doesn't want to be that? And it encourages others to listen as well. So this is something that you might see or you might want to practice using. And then those hand gestures. I just wanted to take a second and go through some of those hand gestures. So some of the things, some of the research out there has found that purposeful, confident gestures can improve comprehension. So to the person that asked that question before, don't sit on your hands. It can really be helpful. And some gestures are so powerful that they carry up to 400% more information. So a well-placed gesture is really a good thing. Okay, so I just want to go over a few examples here. So numbers, you've been seeing me do it throughout. We have 4 body language cues. There's 2 things I want you to know. So numbers are a really easy way, that we use hand gestures, and it's cueing the other person. Guess what? There's 3 more things she's going to be talking about. Big or small, that is something too, where you can indicate you're working on a project. There's a lot to do, or, we're just a couple tweaks to this contract and we're good. There's me versus you. This is the cue for it's personal. This one you might see or have caught yourself doing. What people will say, well, in my opinion, and do this, it shows that it matters. Or you're listening to a story that's really powerful. You might even just find yourself doing this, like, oh, I'm so sorry. This is showing that it's really connecting. So this is something that you can use too to show that you feel it. Me versus you. Oh, I already did that. Thumb pinch. This, it's the political season in the United States right now. We're wrapping up for midterms. You will see a lot of the thumb pinch where politicians are coached to do that. Really what it is pointing is a bad thing. We don't like this. This does not feel good, nor does this. So it's always the open palm. So I would say, yes, do you have a question? Here's my slide. Look at this. Check out my bookshelves where I'm always keeping hands open. So practice that if you're giving a presentation, any kind of pitch, or just an everyday conversation, that you're keeping the open palm. And them versus us, this is just kind of a way to categorize. So if you're talking about 2 different ideas, there's apples or oranges, red or blue. Or even saying we have 3 options. We can do this, this, or this, where you're grouping it. That just allows our brain to kind of wrap around it more. All right, you can do it. I want you to start thinking about those warmth and competence cues and consider what you can do to balance those out. How can you add more competence in? How can you add more warmth in? And just how can you be more expressive so people can read your cues? So what I want you to do is think about yourself and in others, kind of be like a reporter or a sleuth. Start really paying attention to some of those cues that you've already received, but now you're kind of putting a name to it and thinking about how you can show up more intentionally, perhaps how you can leverage some of these skills. So what I have for you is a DIY nonverbal audit, because what we've been talking about body language almost exclusively, and it is bigger than that. It is bigger just than body language. So this is, what does your office look like? What does your Zoom background look like? All the areas that you live in, your clothes, all those things become part of your identity, your profile pictures, etc. So if you want to just jog your memory and think about things, I just have sort of a DIY nonverbal audit. You are welcome to do that. And then also, if you have a question, you inevitably will, or you'll see the replay later. Here's where you can find me, and I welcome your questions and your connections. So if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, that would be great. I have a website, Body Language Blueprints. You can find out more information there. And if you're up for joining a Facebook group, there's a free Facebook group, Body Language Learning. So that's a way to learn different tips and strategies as well. Okay, so questions. I hate to brag, but I was trying to end at 12:55 and we're just about there. So
Yes, Kristin. There are a handful of questions well, wonderful job, by the way. And yes,
Okay, great.
yes, on the dot there. So there was a handful of questions that came in. So let's see here. First one. This is there is a cultural element to consider when using your hands. I lived in Italy for 13 years, so I tend to use my hands a lot. Do you address cultural elements when talking about nonverbal communication?
Yeah, that is part of it. And emblems or hand gestures are different culturally. That isn't universal. So there's some hand gestures you have to be aware of. Yes, so there, and actually culturally space, we didn't talk about that. So in the United States, which is my point of reference, about 1.5 to 3 feet is where we feel is like a safe distance. So even when I'm talking now, I'm an arm's length away from the camera. I want to be that same distance that I would be in real life. Where if you get closer than that, that starts to make some people feel awkward. That can be different. Like I live in the Midwest, we are used to more space. If you're in bigger cities, people are used to being closer together. So that is absolutely impacted culturally. But yes, of course, the expressiveness, there's a lot. People are fascinating.
Next question. How can I underline my intention or decision with my body language?
Well, okay, your intention, or is there any more specifics the person can give? Basically, when we are in alignment, that's when people can trust us. When we are saying things and we're out of alignment, that's when our gut is like, I don't know. There's a really great book called The Gift of Fear that talks about this, where people will often, women will be attacked or, raped. And they had a gut feeling something was wrong, but they don't respond to it because their brain isn't catching up on with what is happening, but it's noticing it. So trust your intuition. And we're almost always right. We're pretty good at that when we're not in alignment. So I would say you really have to believe what you're saying. I mean, when it's in alignment, that's when we get trust. So I don't know if that answered that.
Yeah, whoever asked the question, please go ahead and comment if you need any further elaboration or anything. Next one, it's exhausting to not default to a resting face. Tips on how to stay on top of that.
I know. Okay, so I say ask for a little bit of grace like that. I know. And that's why Zoom is so fatiguing, or any kind of virtual call, is because you're on. It's like having a camera on all day. That's too much. So I think, when you're listening, like during this presentation, like great, if you have RBF, have at it. But if you are talking or you're in part of a small group, then you have to be a little bit more mindful. But yeah, the science is still rolling in how a full day of like being on camera is too much. It is exhausting. I feel your pain.
All right, so that looks like all of the questions that have come in, at least right now for you. I'm going to go ahead and pop off the
the book again, the Gift of Fear, and I must have it over in a different part of my office. But does anyone know the author? I know I should know it. It's a cool book.
All right. And then as we wrap up too, there's a couple questions asking about this video and it being recorded. I am putting in a link in the comments right now. That's our YouTube page. So all of our events, are the vast majority of our events, once they're done being streamed, they get slightly edited and uploaded to our YouTube page. So go ahead and check out that link for everything that's coming up. Thank you, Jamila, for that. And then I also wanted
to thank you, She-Dragon. Gavin DeBecker. Thank you. Sorry.
That's all right. And then I also wanted to put a link in the chat as well for our upcoming events. So this is going to be the most concise list for all of our upcoming events. It's off of our website, but we have events that are posted out till about November at this point. We're always trying to bring in different voices, ideas, and concepts, even within those 9 distinct event series. So that's a great kind of snapshot into the not so distant future as to what's in the pipeline for DreamBank. So yeah, I wanted to make sure that you folks have those links. And then as we wrap up here, Kristin, we always like to ask, because we are a community of fellow fearless dreamers, what's one piece of advice that you have for someone who's actively pursuing a dream?
Oh, well, I'm a personal development aficionado. So I think just reading, just getting information from many different sources, but yeah, I love learning, like constant learning, trying, figuring it out. Yeah, I keep working at it. It's little by little. Like if you look back at where you were a year ago and where you are now, when you really start working on things, it's like the atomic habits, they compound, they build. Absolutely. Just keep on keeping on.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for that. Thank you, everyone, for taking time out of your day. Hope to see you soon. With that, we will go ahead and cap it there, and we'll see you all next time. Take care.
Bye.